John Kavulich in St. Petersburg. He's a political commentator. John, it's good to speak to you again. Thank you for your time. Now, we know that a full-on war, if the U.S. is involved, has monumental repercussions, not just for the region, but for the globe. Surely President Trump is really keeping this in mind as he makes a decision on whether or not to involve the U.S. militarily.
Well, President Trump is, acting somewhat like a child with a water balloon and looking for a target because he wants to watch that water balloon explode and get someone wet, but not take any responsibility for getting that person wet. And that's pretty much, how he's looking. He wants to be tough. He needs to continue to show that he's being tough on Iran. And he knows Iran doesn't have a lot of friends. And he knows Israel is likely to do what Israel wants to do, regardless of what the U.S. wants Israel to do. So therefore, he needs to be a part of that in order to be able to hopefully take credit for whatever Israel does. The challenge, though, is that no one believes Iran. And so even if Iran were to agree to another JPCOA, another Obama administration-led type of agreement, or even something more than that, more intrusive, that would prevent them from enriching uranium to a military grade, or even enriching uranium just for peaceful means for nuclear power, is the state of Israel going to believe them? And the odds are no. So we're going to circle back to this at some point, even if there's a lot of bombing and a lot of death.
Well, Israel doesn't believe them now. Neither do they believe U.S. intelligence, who have said that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, or the UN's nuclear watchdog, who says Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. And it does make me wonder then, why does no one believe Iran when you've got U.S. intelligence, you've got an international body saying they don't have nuclear weapons, and the only power in the Middle East that does is actually Israel, whether they say it or not?
Yeah, I don't mean to be flippant with my answer, but your question takes me back to the first Trump administration, when his campaign manager, in response to a question where the questioner said, well, that just isn't true. And her response was, well, I'm using alternative facts. And that's pretty much what we have. There is a set of facts, a data set that most of the world and most of those who should know what Iran is doing accept as real. And then there are those that simply want activity. Israel wants to punish Iran. It really doesn't matter whether all of the facts line up. It just wants to do it. The United States, President Trump, again, has that water balloon in his hand, and he wants to use it, and he wants to watch people get wet so he can say he's tough. The European Union is trying to avoid a military conflict because, as your setup piece was talking about, the flow of oil through the Gulf, and that potentially that could be constrained, meaning oil prices go up. And of course, what happens if oil prices go up? That helps the Russian Federation. It doesn't help China. It doesn't help India, where China and India are getting a lot of their oil from, in the case of both of them, from Russia and from Iran. So you have all of this going on, and in the end, this is going to be settled on the basis of facts versus alternative facts. And what the United Nations Security Council says isn't going to mean anything. And I'll use President Erdogan's statement of about a year plus ago at the G20 in New Delhi. And he basically, talking about the UN General Assembly, he said, until countries agree to abide by a ruling, by a decision that they don't want, the UN General Assembly, the UN Security Council isn't going to mean much. So, we're not in a good place, and likely we're going to see, see just a continuing of bombing and a continuing of people dying. And of course, no one's talking about Gaza, and no one's talking about the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yeah, one can't see this getting any better in the coming days. John Kavulich, it's really good, as always, to get your analysis. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.